Hello, Packers fans worldwide. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast for November 15th, 2025. And today we are doing our pregame show for Packers versus Giants. Hopefully, this will be a big bounce back game. I still contend that the Packers defense is doing just fine and doesn't need to bounce back. In fact, I think they're going to have a huge outing this week against the Giants, and we'll get into that more later with the keys to the game and the matchups. Um, but I do think the offense needs a firm reset here. A lot of that had to do last week with injuries. Injuries were the key to the game. Yeah, I still contend if Romeo Dobbs had played the game full game, if Matthew Golden had played the full game, I think we would have won the game against the Eagles. The game was that close. If you go back and watch the All 22, there's so many drives that stalled because of a missed catch by an inexperienced receiver or a bad route run by a receiver that's not used to playing as much as they played on that game against the Eagles due to injury. So I do think the Packers are a lot closer to being that team that can actually knock off the former Super Bowl champions. They lost by 3 points to the Super Bowl champions when the Eagles had a clear advantage on injuries in the game. So I do think the Packers are still very close to being a contender for the Super Bowl. I still think that's a reality here, and we've got some time to make it happen. So we're looking at the Giants this week. Then we have a very winnable game at home against the Vikings. I will actually be at that game at Lambeau for Vikings versus Packers in 2 weeks. And not even 2 weeks, like a week and a day. At any point, I will be at that game. And then after that becomes the real test of Thanksgiving against the Lions. And I think the division could likely come down to that game. We'll have to see how things shake out this week with the rest of the NFC North. But that is a huge game for the Green Bay Packers. If they want to make it right and if they want to have a solid chance of winning the division, a strong showing and really a victory against the Lions are super critical in Thanksgiving. But right now we're talking about the Giants, so let's flip the page back to the Giants. But first, I want to thank you for your support. We're now at 12,300 subscribers. To get to the channel at that size, with only starting this channel in April, is really amazing. So I want to thank everybody for the support, everybody who's hit that sub button. Really appreciate it. Can we get to 14,000 by Thanksgiving? We're going to need some people who are not subscribers to hit that sub button to make that happen. So hit that sub button. If you've already hit that sub button, hit that like button, because it really does help us bring more people to the channel. And now let's start with our injury report for this game. So we're going to switch over to our injury report and share our screen. All right, here we go. So we're going to focus on players that have a game status and see if that's going to be significant. Now, Aaron Banks did get veteran rest on Friday, probably because he has a lot of nagging injuries. And the Packers are really trying to get Aaron Banks to 100% health so he can pay off that big free agent contract that he has. Right now, he has been a negative when you look at his contract and his play so far. But he hasn't been healthy since training camp. So let's give Aaron Banks a break. The Packers are married to him contractually. So let's support Aaron Banks and hope that with the injuries getting better, hopefully, by the playoffs, that Aaron Banks can be an asset for this team. Edgerrin Cooper will be fine for this game. Romeo Dobbs, fully participated Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He will be fine for this game as long as he doesn't re-injure his chest during the game. Kingsley Inigbare is dealing with a knee problem. He was limited Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He will be on the field this week, hopefully with him and Lucas Van Ness hopefully getting some limited snaps. Between the two of them, they can effectively be the defensive end number 3 for this game against the Giants. I'd like to see Inigbare get less snaps so he doesn't risk injury to his knee. And I'd like Lucas Van Ness to get some limited snaps in this game, perhaps on key third downs, to really get back into the groove before we have that showdown with the Lions. Matthew Golden is questionable. He had limited participation Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He is listed as questionable. However, he was almost able to play on Monday night. So I think the chances of him playing, I think if they had the old rules, he would probably be listed as probable, not questionable. But we'll have to see if he's in there at game time. I think the Packers need him at this point to be a big part of this offense, and I think he will be this week against the Giants. Then we have Nate Hobbs, who was out. Zach Tom, limited participation. He will play. Micah Parsons, limited participation. He will play. This is really a combination of dealing with nagging injuries and veteran rest. Lucas Van Ness is questionable. I think he's about 50-50 to play in this game. I'd really like to see him play because we don't want Inigbare, who has a knee injury, to be pushed too far. So if they can share reps, as I said, I think that would really be an ideal situation for Inigbare and Lucas Van Ness. Savion Williams is questionable with limited participation Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's dealing with a foot injury. He was able to play on Monday night. I assume he will play in this game as well as a gadget player. One of the biggest disappointments that came out of Monday night is that Savion Williams really hasn't been given options to play as a true wide receiver. Even when they were desperate for wide receiver play on Monday night, Savion Williams did not have the reps in practice or in training camp to really become a player you could throw in at wide receiver at any position. He still remains a gadget player as part of his development, and that will likely continue against the Giants. I do hope that in the offseason, regardless of what happens this year, the Packers really focus on letting Savion Williams develop as a receiver and not just as a gadget guy / punt return kick returner, because he really has the ability to be a quality wide receiver, but he really needs the reps. So let's look at the Giants. The Giants are a mess. So I think you have to go back to week 2 of this season, because the Packers have really been snake bitten by injuries, to see a opponent that had a worse injury situation than the Packers. So we've got some serious problems for the Giants, and the Packers for once will have the injury advantage, I think, this week. Adebo is questionable for this game. Jackson Dart is out for this game. We know Jameis Winston is going to be the starter for the Giants, and we'll talk about that in keys to the game. We've got Chauncey Goldston, linebacker, who's out for this game for the Giants. We've got Evan Neal, offensive lineman, out for this game. We've got Tyler Tubin, doubtful for this game. Nunez Noches, doubtful for this game. Bobby Ubreke is questionable for this game. Darius Slayton is a big out for this game. And Theodorox, the linebacker, is out for this game. So I think, and I talked about this earlier this week, if you watch my previous videos for this matchup, is we have a new coach who's trying to win the job for next year. But one of the ways a interim coach can really screw things up on a bad team is playing his players to an injury, which impacts the long-term viability of the team. So I think with this injury report, we're seeing a lot of situations where the Giants, I think have made decisions not based just on injuries, but also based on the fact that they're out of the mix for the playoffs this year. So why not let some of these injured players get healthy before you put them back onto the field? I think some of these players probably could have played in this game with maintenance of their pain or their injuries, but I think the Giants again are being very cautious about some of these injuries because they really don't have a lot to play for in this game. So there you go. So let's switch over to our keys for the game. Let's switch over to those keys to victory. You've probably heard this before. Establish the run with Josh Jacobs. The Giants have struggled against the run, especially late in the game. And I think that Josh Jacobs is going to have his best game of the year. It would not surprise me if Josh Jacobs got to 85 yards plus in this game, as the Packers will succeed in the run game against the Giants and have a really balanced offense this week. They do have to lean on the run because they still are dealing with some injuries at wide receiver and tight end, as we know. But I think this is an opponent that will let the running game get right. And I think that Josh Jacobs will have 85 yards rushing in this game. And I think the Packers will probably have 120 to 130 rushing yards in this game. They're going to lean into this game heavily on the road. It's going to be some possible weather conditions in this game because it is outside in New Jersey. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. But I think the Packers focus on running the ball in this game. That's going to turn to Jordan Love. Jordan Love has to be efficient in this game. Now, one of the things that I saw in the tape on the Monday game, I watched it twice, didn't like to see it. So I've watched the Monday night game against the Eagles 3 times, and time after time after time, Matt LaFleur called the right play. Jordan Love delivered the ball right where it needed to be, and the receivers screwed up. Either they ran the wrong play or they dropped the ball when it was right in their chest. It happened several times in the game against the Eagles that cost the Packers probably the points that would have won the game. So Jordan Love needs to be what he has been the last couple weeks, and hopefully the wide receivers will respond and produce and support him. So that's very important. Now, with Jameis Winston playing this game, he is a Jekyll and Hyde player. What I mean by that is he can make amazing plays down the field, which is why I think the Giants are starting him, because he has more upside for the offense than Winston at this point in his career. So Winston will either throw a big play for a touchdown or throw an interception. It's a 50-50 proposition when he throws the ball deep downfield. It's his strength and his weakness, and he's already accepted he is what he is at this point. So I think we're going to see lots of opportunities for interceptions and turnovers in this game. Either fumbles by Winston or interceptions by Winston. So the secondary has to be ready to take advantage of those opportunities. And part of that is going to be Micah Parsons and the defensive line getting in Jameis Winston's face. He's not as mobile as he was a couple years ago, although he still has a very good arm. So look for him to try to get the ball out if he's under pressure, which will give the secondary opportunities for turnovers in this game. So we're going to have to see what happens there. As far as defending the rest of the Giants' offense, it's going to be tough for the Giants to really put up big points in this game due to injuries and issues with their starting quarterback. It would not surprise me if this is a low-scoring game for the Giants. And we're going to have to limit those explosive Jameis Winston plays out of the quarterback position. So matchup dynamics here. The Packers are favored by 7 points with the over-under at 42.5, which seems really high to me given the Packers and the Giants' current production for points. I think the logic for the over and under at 42.5 is that the Packers are going to get right in this game, but 42.5 seems really high for a total in this game. Giants are 2-8 and are on a 4-game losing streak, while the Packers are 5-3-1 and are fighting for playoff positioning and coming off a 2-game losing streak. So something's got to break here. Somebody has to find a way to win this game. Interim coach Mike Kafka's decision to start Winston over Russell is probably a gamble, betting on Winston's ability to make big plays in the passing game, which are not something you're going to get out of Russell Wilson at this stage in his career. So let's switch over to our matchups for the game. Let's go ahead and share that to you guys. All right, our matchups for the game. Packers are still 5th for PFF in power rankings. That tells me that it is more likely that the Packers are going to turn things around before the end of the season and that they're going to get better, because PFF is telling me that the Packers are still the 5th best team in the league despite all their struggles. So look for that to get right against the Giants and against the Vikings in the next 2 weeks. Power rank on defense, Packers are 10th and the Giants are 29th. To be honest, I would think the Packers are probably closer to 7th or 8th at power ranking for defense for me right now, because they have kept this team in games week after week while the offense has struggled. The problems are not the defense for the Packers. Power ranking offense, still 6th, despite the struggles the past 2 weeks. The Giants are 23rd. And looking at offensive snaps, the Giants have more offensive snaps than the Packers, probably because they've been playing behind most of the time and throwing the ball like crazy. If you look at running plays, the Packers are right around 41%, and the Giants are only at 38%. Once again, that's because they tend to be losing at the end of games. I would like to see the Packers get closer to 50-50 in this game. That would be a big improvement against an opponent who cannot stop the run. And the Packers need to find their running game for these bigger matchups. Okay? Next week when they play the Vikings, it's going to be at Lambeau Field. There's probably going to be snow. Fingers crossed, because I really want to go to a snow game at Lambeau this year. And this is my last opportunity, barring a playoff run. So we're looking at a situation where the Packers need to run the ball against the Vikings, so they need to start doing it against the Giants. We can't just turn on the running game against the Vikings, so you need to turn it on against the Giants to keep the Vikings off of the field in a week and a half when they play. Looking at the quarterback comparison, there's no comparison here. Jordan Love has struggled the last 2 weeks, but again, I think that was due to receiver issues. If you look at the tape, Matt LaFleur is calling the right plays more often than not, and Jordan Love is getting the ball where it needs to be more often than not. It's a wide receiver that is causing the issue, either with a wrong route or dropping the ball. This is something that the Packers can clean up, and Jordan Love can still be an elite quarterback by the end of the season. So let's take a look at the lineups for this game. We'll start out with the Giants on offense with 2 tight end personnel. Packers base defense. As you can see, let's just take a broad stroke at how the Packers are playing on defense. McKinney is playing great. Williams is playing great. Cooper's playing great. McDuffie is playing really good. And Walker, I think this rating is lower than it should be. PFF has never been a fan of Rasheed Walker's game. And that tends to be the case right here. I would put him more in the green category than the orange. Orange says eh, and green says good, right? Carrington Valentine is starting. He's playing very well. He's the 10th rated cornerback. Keyshawn Nixon is playing okay at the 37th rated cornerback. I think Keyshawn Nixon's biggest issue lately is penalties. If he can avoid penalties, I think this rating will go a lot higher. Of course, we have Micah Parsons. He's an elite player. Wyatt has come back from injury, has been solid in the middle. Kobe Wooden has been solid in the middle, and Rashawn Gary has been a great pass rusher. So let's look at the personnel. Overall, the Packers defense is playing very well. Let's look at the Giants. This is where things get really ugly for the Giants. Robinson, with Slayton being out, is their best receiver. Bellinger is a solid tight end. And their offensive line is actually playing better than the rest of their offense. But Thomas against Micah Parsons is going to be interesting, but I think you're going to see Micah Parsons going against the right tackle more often than not in this game. Jameis Winston has no stats because this will be his first start. And Tracy is their running back, which is not a significant threat. So the Giants are in really big trouble in their base offense here, the 2 tight ends, which is really their best chance. If the Giants really want to win this game, they have to go back to fundamentals, which is running the ball and play action, which really goes to Winston's strength of making big plays in the passing game. Let's look at 3 wide receivers for the Giants and nickel for the Packers. Again, this really does not favor the Giants here. They don't really have a playmaker that's going to be a key to the game here. Again, they need to run the ball to have a chance in this game. I would say that the nickel defense actually favors the Packers here because you get Bullard onto the field, who's been playing better as of late. And it really gets those fast, dynamic playmakers for the Packers on the field. All right, so let's switch over to the Giants on defense. Base defense. Packers in 2 tight end formation. We've got Romeo Doubs against Floyd, and we've got Adebo likely is out for this game, so they're even going to have a worse cornerback against Watson. So this is going to be a key matchup, is whoever their second corner is against Watson is going to be a big mismatch. And we're going to also have Fitzpatrick and Musgrave, who need to pick up the slack a little bit for Tucker Kraft. I think Musgrave, given the problems with the offense, actually did okay last week. But I'd like to see more consistent plays out of Musgrave. He's got to get more receptions, and he's got to help move the chains for this offense. Okay, if we switch to the Giants to nickel defense and the Packers to 3 wide receiver, we've got advantages here across the board, okay? Watson, now I think we're actually going to see Golden in the slot if he plays. If he doesn't play, then it probably will be Wicks. But I think we're going to see Matthew Golden in the slot in this game. So it's going to be Romeo Doubs, Wicks, and Watson. Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs. The offensive line is really playing pretty well given some of the injury issues. Zach Tom is having a very solid season. Rasheed Walker is playing okay. Sean Ryan moves to center, and I don't think you lose much from Elton Jenkins to Sean Ryan because Elton Jenkins was not playing very well this year anyways. And I think he was playing himself out the door. So I think our offensive line will be well. We need to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. Again, Josh Jacobs should get 85 yards plus in this game. It will shock me if he does not. And I will be very concerned about the offensive line if Josh Jacobs does not get 85 yards in this game. Jordan Love should be fine in this game. He's still the 9th rated quarterback despite the problems the last 2 weeks. And I think he will have a very solid outing. Jordan Love will probably give us 250 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. And probably at least 1 interception or a pass that should have been an interception in this game. That tends to be the trend. So that is your pregame show for Packers versus Giants. My prediction for this game is the Packers get things a little better on offense. I'm looking for the Packers to score 20 points or more, and for the defense to hold the Giants to 10 points or less. So my prediction is Giants 10, Packers 20, and the Packers get a critical road win as they get ready for the Vikings and the matchup against the Lions on Thanksgiving. So that'll do it for today. I will be traveling tomorrow for work. I'll actually probably be watching the game on my plane ride. At least it gives me something to do on the plane. And then we will do a post-game show probably on Monday. I'm not sure when or where it will be posted because I'm going to a conference. So I'm going to have to work it in sometime on Monday. But that's my plan, to have a post-game show on Monday to talk about, hopefully, a Packers victory this week. They really need it. I think the Packers are a lot closer to being a good team. Okay? We struggled the last 2 weeks, but it's not the defense. It's not special teams. It's issues with injuries at wide receiver and wide receivers dropping the ball. If we can turn that around, I think the Packers can be back to being an elite team by the time we get to Thanksgiving. So the next 2 weeks are critical. The Packers have to show it against the Giants. Then they have to show it against the Vikings. Please, Packers, show it against the Vikings, because I'm going to Lambeau for that game. And there's nothing worse than going to Lambeau Field and watching a stinker. And the Packers have got to get the ball rolling for that big matchup on Thanksgiving against the Lions. But let's focus on the Giants this week. As always, go Pack Go, and we'll see you Monday after the game, and we'll talk to you then.